Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Guys Who Stare at Stats. I'm Cade Kennedy, joined by Connor Gray and Eddy. JD is back, folks. It's been a while, but he has returned. We have a more college football-focused episode than usual. The college football rankings just coming out. As always, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment down below. Did the committee get it right? No, probably not. Just on my guess, probably not going to happen. Never happens. But maybe they did get something right. Leave below what you agree, disagree, and be sure, as always, if you're watching on Twitch, follow us at twitch.tv/NWTV7 for more updates on when we go live. But turning it over to the most important question of the day. Fellas, how's your day going?
It's been going pretty good. I can't really complain.
So we'll see if JD can get in camera here.
Yeah, it's good. We're having a great day.
Having a great day? All right. Well,
It's like $60 on Prize Picks, but it's fine.
Hey, listen, sometimes things happen. And
yeah, I wish they didn't.
I know. We all do. But we've got more important things to talk about a little bit than Prize Picks, because the college football playoff rankings are out, and sure enough, to the surprise of absolutely no one, you beat the number one team in the country. You're going to become the number one team in the country.
And man pretty much controlled that game from the get-go, pretty much. Tennessee just really had no answers for Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia back at number one with their 27-13 win over Tennessee. Congratulations to the Vols. You did score 13 points. That is an accomplishment when it comes to scoring on Georgia. Ohio State at number two. We'll get into them a little bit as well as we go through the games after the rankings. Buckeyes just struggling with Northwestern. I get the wind and everything. I get the rain. But at the same time, you can't struggle that much in that type of game, I feel like.
Especially against Northwestern. It's like you can blame the elements all you want. It's at a point where you're talent-wise, you are way better than Northwestern by a country mile, and yet you only beat them by 14. That's really the offense just failing to do anything going, and that's where you got to make adjustments to actually find a way to get points on the board while battling the elements. And you're not going to really hear Michigan complain about dealing with the elements a lot, because they deal with that and they play just fine.
Yeah, so they had their rough first half against Rutgers, trailed 17-14 at the half. But you know what? They came back, they regrouped, their defense stepped up, forced turnovers, did whatever they need to do, got a 52-17 blowout, and boom, it's like it never even happened.
And that's where I think I would have flipped Michigan to number two, then kept Ohio State at 3, just because how teams responded to. Well, Michigan, like, they can struggle in that first half. That second half, they're beating you up. They've beaten everybody up pretty much for the most part. And I'd say versus Michigan, Ohio State, when it comes to Penn State, Michigan, for the most part, took control of that game, while Ohio State struggled to really pull away, and then obviously Clifford made so many errors.
I mean, you shouldn't really struggle against Northwestern, especially in the elements. You're not throwing the ball as much. You're Ohio State. You're known for running it. You're known for powering it down. You're known for your offensive line averaging 300 pounds and being able to run faster than me. Like, it's pretty impressive, especially when you got guys like Athletic, I can't even remember the running back's name for the life of me. They don't use him.
Well, you got Maya Henderson there, yeah.
They don't use him, ever.
It's one of those that I understand what Ryan Day's trying to do. You want to stick to your guns. You have C.J. Stroud. You have all the receivers in the world you could want. But there's a good there's a 12th man out there known as a 40-mile-per-hour wind. You can run the ball. Even C.J. Stroud, who by no means not the fastest guy, still faster than me, obviously, but not the fastest guy on the field. He's blowing by defenders on 30, 40-yard runs when they finally let him run the ball.
Yeah. He doesn't have track speed. He doesn't have top end. He's got football speed. He's able to break away from opponents. He's able to get the angles, get away. You're not going to catch him as soon as he gets to the outside. There's no way. The only way you do is if you got an angle coming across the field and you're able to catch him off guard. But the man is so shifty. It's just. And
this is why I think Michigan should be ranked higher, ranked at least number 2, is because obviously they're a run team, and they will run you over, and that's why you're not. If Michigan played Northwestern with those conditions, Michigan isn't going to complain, because they're just going to, all right, we'll just run you over, and they would do that.
Yeah, I would say that's a game where Jim Harbaugh loves Blake Corum's our guy. We're going to give him the ball 30 times. J.J. McCarthy, he can run, no problem.
That's what they did.
That's what they would do.
That's what they do.
And speaking of teams that have been surprising people, purple teams playing well, TCU, number 4, the Frogs. Story of the year, who would have thought? Certainly not most of us, I would think. TCU number 4, their highest ranking in a long time since the original college football playoff.
I'm happy.
polls.
No, I'm really happy. They deserve
You're
it.
happy for 'em?
It doesn't matter. I've been seeing all these polls on Twitter and everything saying they don't play defense, but yet they're ranked number what? They're ranked in the top 20 in defense, top 20 in offense. I can't remember last time I looked at it, that's where they're at. But they're pulling teams out of the water. It doesn't matter.
It's the Big 12 stigma that people still have in their heads, despite the fact you can literally look at. I literally just look at that Tennessee and Alabama game. There was no defense for that game. So the stigma that the Big 12 teams don't play defense, they do. The difference is they're just better at offense.
The only times Big 12 teams ever get beat are in the playoffs by an SEC team, which is by Bama, or whenever they play an ACC team like Clemson. It's the only time they've been beaten, and Georgia.
Who's also an SEC team.
SEC team. Those are the only two teams that carry the SEC in defense. That's it. Every other team sucks. Vanderbilt. What is it? Alabama. What is it? Institute Citadel.
Okay. Citadel's FCS, to be fair.
My bad, FCS, but I apologize.
So they did beat South Carolina one time, though. So I don't know if that granted him honorary
it should.
SEC status for week.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of that, South Carolina. But no, it's just like they talk about it. But every other time we have bowl games, Big 12 teams against SEC teams, they get blown out. They get blown out every single time. And everyone's like, oh, they struggled with Texas Tech. Congrats. Bama struggled with Texas. Who cares?
Yeah, but speaking of the SEC, there's a certain team falling to number 5, Tennessee this week, falling 4 spots for their loss to Georgia. I mean, if you're the Vols, obviously the playoff path is still there. You just need someone in front of you to lose. Hey, Ohio State plays Michigan. Maybe TCU messes up a game. They've still got to go to Texas, to Baylor. The path is still easily there for Tennessee to win out. But now I would say it gets even easier for Tennessee. You can make the argument that loss to Georgia helps them. Not only do they get a week of rest, title week, if someone gets beat and you get some problems, Tennessee could walk back to that 3 spot.
Easily, yeah, they could. I mean, as long as they don't mess up the rest of their games on their schedule, which I don't. Can you pull up their schedule real quick?
Yeah, so if we look at a Tennessee schedule here, just popping it out to look at, it is one of those that you look at it and it's not the most intimidating thing remaining. Missouri at South Carolina at Vanderbilt. Not the most intimidating of schedules. You get the last.
Like playing a JV team.
Yeah, it's basically you have an easy road to just sit and wait for see how the championship turns out, because it was long. I mean, we don't see them losing to any of those teams, so they pretty much
Vanderbilt won't pull up for that.
But
Butch Jones isn't in Tennessee. Vanderbilt can't hurt them anymore.
Yes, he plays defense. Which one? Bama, Georgia, Tennessee.
To be fair, Georgia plays defense. They sacrifice their offense half the time for it, but they do play defense. Their
defense is amazing.
Their defense is pretty good, to be fair to Georgia. But you look at Alabama and Tennessee
it's
this
like
year.
the Vikings in 2015. It's just like there's 20 people on the field at one point.
I think we pretty much fully expect Tennessee to win out for the rest of their schedule, and all they have to do is sit and wait. So what happens? I mean, unless something horrible happens.
Loses to Texas.
But basically, because you have Michigan, Ohio State, and TCU that are in front of them, those teams could more likely lose within the rest of the season.
With Ohio State, how they played last week, their confidence can be down. Now, you got to think, if they go into one of these games and don't prepare good enough, they could very easily get upset. Michigan, probably not. Just because.
Michigan's overall confidence is going to be riding high through up until the game with Ohio State. That's where I think Ohio State they'll need to go into the next game and pretty much build themselves back up to be like, hey, we're here.
I really think if it's number 2 versus number 3 in Ohio State, Michigan blows Ohio State out of the water.
With the way the teams have been playing, especially I think offensively, Michigan, I think both teams in many ways are similar in regards to how they can struggle in the first half. Yeah. But in regards to second half effort, Michigan would pretty much, it might wipe the floor with them overall. But we still got like a couple more weeks before we get there.
Yeah, we still got a little bit more time until that showdown in Columbus Day in the season. Moving to number 6, it's Oregon, another team that Bo Nix has found his spot. Dan Lanning, yes, they got beat 49-3 at the beginning of the season by Georgia. that loss, I mean, you look at what Georgia's been able to do. That loss still looks bad, but it looks slightly less bad every single week, I would say, for the Ducks. They're the Pac-12's representative. Them and USC are the two, but if I had to pick one, I would say it's Oregon.
I would pick Oregon also because
Oregon.
Top to bottom, Oregon is a more in regards to how it is more balanced because their defense can play up to when you need them to. You can't say the same thing for USC, especially that defense for USC is just especially against teams they should have been blowing out. They're giving up way too many points.
Yep.
Yeah, so JD's got to get on out of here. He spent his whole 10 minutes here, and now he's out on his way.
It was like 15.
Okay.
It's here at 6:30 because it starts at like 6:43.
OBS says 10 minutes, JD. Gosh dang you.
Okay, but anyways,
Good luck, my guys.
but Oregon is a much different team than when they started the year. They started the year against, obviously, you had to play Georgia, and that wasn't going to bode well at all. And it was on a neutral site, even though not really.
Yeah, the neutral side of Atlanta.
Exactly. But Oregon overall, they're a much better team than where they were. Obviously, we gave them all kinds of crap the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. Then they started beating ranked teams and pretty much doing what they should have been doing, especially with some expectations on them. If you had high expectations for them, overall, most of us thinking that they were going to be like 15 ranked or whatever kind of team, and nope, they are proven that hey, that Georgia loss, while it's awful, we're a much better team now, and they're in a good spot. They just got to bide their time and win the Pac-12.
Yep, and then moving on to, I would say, the real winners of the week. LSU is number 7. You get the overtime win over Bama. What a great week for LSU. Just absolutely, you had another earthquake game where the official seismograph there detected that there indeed was movement when LSU scored to win the game on the 2-point conversion. So it is confirmed once again, Death Valley can get loud enough to cause an earthquake. Tigers getting a 32-31 win that, I'll be honest, I did not expect coming. I thought Alabama would waltz into this game. They would struggle, no doubt. I'm not saying Alabama's going to blow LSU out by any means. LSU is still a talented team. But the way that Jaden Daniels played, the way that LSU team fought, you have a freshman saving the day twice on 2 amazing catches to tie the game and then to win the game. Just LSU played quite possibly their best game of the season. But to me, the question is not, anything about Alabama or anything about this game even. How bad does that 1-point loss to Florida State hurt you now?
It's one of those things that obviously I know the committee will probably still look at that, and that's still going to be a blight on LSU. But that 1-point loss really does hurt. But I think LSU from then, because wasn't that like week 2 or week 3?
LSU, that Florida State loss was the first week of the season.
First week.
That was the Sunday night game.
Okay, so I'd say, like I said with Oregon, they're a much different team than where they were now. LSU, we were like, until the game with Ole Miss, we were like, me and you were like, Ole Miss would get ahead and kind of bide their time to stay ahead or something like that. I'm not sure how those particular picks went, but
you have to watch the episode, folks.
Exactly. But LSU just flat out dominated Ole Miss. And that just showed that, okay, LSU is a much different team. Maybe Ole Miss just wasn't really that great overall. And then LSU has basically played really well for the most part of the season. Who was their second loss to?
LSU's other loss was to Tennessee.
Okay,
so you lost to the number 5 team in the country in a 1-point loss to Florida State.
And they got beat up by a Tennessee.
Yeah, 40-13.
I think LSU mentally wasn't ready for that one, and that was in Knoxville.
Or it was in Death Valley.
Oh, it was in Death Valley.
It was an 11 a.m. kick, to be fair.
Okay, well,
they're not used to big games at 11 a.m.
Okay, here's the thing, LSU. Don't have big games at 11 because that messes everything up.
Yeah,
that's basically what they got to do now.
LSU, scream at CBS if you do not get at least a 2:30 game.
Well, they won't have to worry about that since they'll be exclusively on ESPN.
Yeah, they won't have to worry about that. ABC will be sure to put them on Saturday.
But I will say LSU is obviously they were mentally ready for this game, unlike with Tennessee, and they were physically ready for anything that Alabama threw at them, and they did a lot. Obviously, Bryce Young didn't have his overall best game of the year. Still played well,
Yeah, he still had his moments.
Still had his moments where he played well, but if he played up to where he could, I think Alabama would win that game. But LSU did a great job offensively and defensively, and obviously that freshman coming in and making the big plays when they needed it for that 2 big catches. LSU deserved the win. Though I will say them being when they were number 10, that was still a little high for me.
Yeah,
they should have been like maybe 14 and then now moved up to like 9.
Yeah, it's one of those that it didn't make any sense at the time, and it was going to be one of those big picks the committee always seems to make, at least in the first poll. They have one team in the top 10 that doesn't feel like they belong, and then we usually find out right after that week.
Yeah.
I think this is the first time I can remember in a while where that pick went correctly for the committee, where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, no, they should be ranked higher. What are you doing, guys?
Even then, I would have had them start. Like if I was the committee, LSU would have been in the top, at least around the top 15, at least around 15. Obviously, the big win, I would have moved them up to like maybe 7-8 spots to near where they're at. But I'm not the committee, so I don't make that decision.
Yeah, and then moving on to number 8, it's USC, who, let me tell you folks, if you didn't stay up to see the end of this Cal game, you missed a lot of nothing until the fourth quarter hit, and then Pac-12 After Dark had a friendly visit to the Coliseum. And I mean, I'll say the same thing when we get to UCLA. But watching USC slowly blow a 20-point lead, watching it get all the way down to 6, almost giving Cal a chance to win the game. Keep in mind, USC didn't officially give Cal a shot at the end. Caleb Williams and company able to convert Travis Dye, making some big runs late in the game. But it's the same thing that you expect from a Lincoln Riley coach team. They play great for 3 quarters. They just cannot find a way to finish. It already bit them once against Utah this year. But that all being said, you just got to win out. Now, Notre Dame is a lot tougher looking now, as we can see they're number 20. UCLA is still a tough opponent. You get Colorado this week on a Friday night. That is the last nice game you get, and then just some really tough competition in the season.
Yep, and we'll see how battle-tested USC will be ready for it. I understand they played Utah, who's a really good team, but they probably should have won that game, and they didn't. Credit being off to Utah for winning that, but you obviously get your easy game, you get your blow-off game against Colorado, like you said, and then you got to get ready to gear up for the last 2 games of the year.
And then moving on to number 9, it's Alabama, only falling 3 spots for their loss, but they're still not the highest-ranked 2-loss team. That credit, of course, goes to LSU. We talked about them earlier. If you're Alabama, this is one of those games you're going to look at, and you're just going to think, how in the world did we lose this game? This is a game that you had every opportunity to win, but when you just needed one big play on defense, you just couldn't get it. Always something went against them.
I will say, defensively, and this also goes back to last year, their defense showed a lot of signs of trouble. Like, they had games where they were in shootouts with people, and then just basically you had to rely a whole lot on Bryce Young to get stuff done. And that's something you shouldn't really do. Like, I understand Bryce Young, great quarterback, great player, but you shouldn't put all that pressure on that offense, who has been consistently great, no matter what year they're under Nick Saban. The defense, on the other hand, is a step back from like I'd probably say that 2020 year, or even right before the COVID season. They're not in the defense is not in the same place where they used to be so dominant. Their secondary is struggling, defensive line hit and miss, but usually pretty consistently good. Then linebacking, all right, but it's mainly their back 7 or 8 or whatever formations they always throw out there that's really killing them a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I mean, with Bryce Young, you have Gibbs, but who's your second best weapon on that team?
Exactly. They don't have a second or third go-to option. You have your first option, and that's pretty much it. I mean, not saying the other guys aren't good, just that they haven't set themselves out there as that other option.
They're not bad, but they're not the elite 5-star talent we're used to Alabama having all over the field. Also, Alabama, when you have a lot of penalties, that also is going to hurt.
Yeah.
One of the more undisciplined Nick Saban teams, which is just, that's a weird sentence to say, undisciplined Nick Saban team.
The scares that they had, the one scare that they had against Texas, and then the 2 loss, everything's been on the road. On home, they're pretty much fine.
Except the A&M game.
Except the A&M game, which was such a, it still makes no sense how that game was close at all. But then again, Bryce Young didn't play in that game, so I'll just chalk it up. Whether they were missing their best player and their backup quarterback is really a step down.
Yeah, so it's what happens when you throw a true freshman out there in his first start.
Yeah.
And then Clemson at number 10. Oh, man, the Tigers had just about every bad thing you could happen. You have the Syracuse game. Everyone said, okay, this has definitely got to be a wake-up call. But Clemson is just slowly drifting, and Notre Dame just shuts them down. And it was incredible to watch for Notre Dame. This is a team that I'll talk a little bit more about their strengths when we get down to them at 20. But if you're Clemson, I mean, this is what I've been saying at least for a while. I'm pretty sure you have too, Connor.
Yeah.
DJ's just not that guy.
No.
He's just not.
He had a few games, like, I think starting it was like the week before Wake Forest, or it was the Wake Forest game, where he played really well. He did great the next week, and then he goes against Syracuse, and all of a sudden he forgets how to play. He struggles. Football has to get replaced. He starts against Notre Dame, and then they have to bench him because he's not doing well. It's like DJ, like we said even last year, he's not that guy. Like last year he wasn't terrible, but he was far cry from a Trevor Lawrence or a Deshaun Watson. So, and the thing is, Clemson was blessed to have those guys come through their program like they did. But DJ he's really not that guy. And he's, I think, the biggest issue. And also trying to go through him when it should be going through Shipley, that's the problem. You should be going through your running back instead of DJ.
Yeah, so when you have all those running backs you can go through, whether it be Shipley, whether it be Mata, you have all sorts of guys you can go to. It's, and this is something that's bothered me all year, regardless if they get it or not. When you have a 4th and 2, you have good running backs. Why are you calling DJ QB power runs? It makes no sense. He's not that fast.
No, like, it'd be the one thing you had, like, as much as OSU fans go sometimes dog on Spencer Sanders, that'd be a perfect scenario guy to go to, because he can take those hits. And he's a run guy that can go because he has speed. DJ can't run as well.
And then the other problem for Clemson, you finally bench DJ. You're down 21-0. You go down the field with Cade Kennedy, and he throws a pick. Throws a pick six, 28-0 Notre Dame. And that pretty much sealed any chance of the Tigers coming back in that one.
Yep.
Notre Dame winning 35-14.
And I think it really win there. And I know we said this earlier, but this is the game that fully exposes how Clemson is not as good as they used to be. Like, they're out from like 2-3 years ago of how good they used to be. They're down. I know with Dabo, with Sweeney there, they'll eventually rebuild back to being the team that they are, but they need that quarterback. That's what they're missing. Defense, usually fine, but Notre Dame just played well. And also, Notre Dame has had a huge turnaround from where they started. They were not very great. Meaning, you lost to Stanford. You lost to Marshall in South Bend, though I think the Stanford game was at Stanford.
No, it was in South Bend.
Oh, it was in South Bend?
Yeah,
Okay.
It was hilarious.
It's like, you lost to it, and one thing, Notre Dame rebounded from what almost could have been a horribly lost season to get made a bowl game now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, not only, just the transformation we've seen from Notre Dame starting out 0-2, the sky is falling, everything looks terrible to. It's a rebuilding year. We got our guy, though, in Marcus Freeman. We beat a top 5 team at the time. We'll be fine.
Yep.
And remember, this is all being done with a backup quarterback, too. This is all being done with Pine out there at QB.
Yep.
Notre Dame's had a heck of a season.
And they're only going to get better, especially the way I've looked at their recruiting classes. They're doing pretty good.
They're doing just fine. They're being Notre Dame. Ole Miss at number 11, they had the glorious bye week to get ready for Alabama. Not sure if that's going to help them or not with Alabama losing to LSU. Usually you get a more enraged Bama the next time you play them. However, Ole Miss does have the benefit that it's in Oxford. Alabama's been a bit more shaky on the road this season. We've seen it before. We'll have to see what the Rebels do, but we got to talk about this. If Ole Miss beats Alabama, all of a sudden we have a 3-team SEC West race, and Alabama's not going to be even in the top 2, which would be crazy to think about.
And everyone will rejoice if it happens. Yeah. That's if it happens. But we got to see, obviously, like you said, being in Oxford and at Ole Miss, that's a huge advantage, and Alabama has struggled. in that environment, especially that crowd can play a huge factor. But obviously, whenever the next time we do this, we get to do picks, we'll see where we're at on that.
Yep, it'll be wild to see for sure. UCLA goes out to the desert. Arizona State, yes, they're not that great. They still gave UCLA problems. This was another. UCLA has a 20-point lead. It slowly starts shifting. Hey, it's 42 to 36. What's going on, guys? There's 5 minutes left, but UCLA able to slowly get down the field and get a 50-36 win. But once again, this is too close for comfort of your Chip Kelly. I get the Pac-12 after dark and all those fun shenanigans, but at the same time, a 14-point win over an Arizona State team that has been struggling all year, had to fire Herm Edwards early in the season, that is not going to cut it right now.
Though I will say Arizona State has done similar things since the firing of Edwards. They actually have been competitive with teams. Not saying they didn't win those games, but they were competitive. They gave issues. Same thing and some similar thing can be said to their UCLA's next opponent, Arizona, where they've recently had a close. They had 2 weeks ago had a close game with USC. So that's one of those things where the defense really needs work for both the California schools and down in LA. If they could get those things mostly fixed, they'd actually be really dominant teams. But overall, their defense is what's killing them. While they have explosive offenses, your explosive offense will only go so far if they run into a team that can shut them down.
Yeah, it can only carry you so far. We're going to kind of group the next two here together because they had similar enough results. Utah beating up Arizona 45-20. Penn State beating up Indiana 45-14. Both teams moving up a spot. Overall, a solid week for the Utes and the Nittany Lions.
Yep. Utah obviously took care of business against Arizona, and then Penn State just took their frustration out on Indiana after having a heartbreaking loss to Ohio State, because they were in that game with Penn State, in that game with Ohio State for almost the majority of that game, and then everything just fell apart right around the fourth quarter. It was just the Ohio State's defense lineman he went off, had the best day ever. I think he was National Player of the Week for defense. So it's really just a lot of things just went wrong, but you rebounded. You showed that loss as much as it's a bad loss, but it really didn't affect how you played the next week. And obviously they say the tale of your team is how they respond to a loss, and they did it by beating up Indiana.
Yeah. But looking here, North Carolina up at 15. They beat Virginia. They go to Wake Forest this week. If North Carolina wins, they lock up the Coastal. And this is a North Carolina team. I mean, Drake May, what he's been able to do, this Carolina team's been really impressive to watch. It's just, can they finally get it together? Can they not have that one inexplicable loss that makes no sense?
Yeah, that's something they really got. I know they're 8-1 right now, and so that's one thing they're really having to avoid. And I will say, with North Carolina obviously still being only 8-1, that Notre Dame getting that win on them still is reason why it's helping them in the top 20, right around the top 20. But you see, it's North Carolina can still do it. It's just you just got, because you survived a scare with Virginia, so you have to do what you can to keep going. You just got to keep going will help your chances.
And then NC State at 16. They got a huge win over Wake Forest. Their defense stepped up once again, forced a couple more turnovers from Sam Hartman. This is a Wolfpack team that kind of having to be a QB by committee now with no Devin Leary, but they're still 7-2 and finding ways to win.
Hey, that's the name of the game. That's one thing you got to keep doing. It's you need win. It's without your starting quarterback, you're the guy that's been really helping you out a lot when it mattered. But when your defense is stepping up and holding an explosive team like Wake Forest back, that says a lot about your team.
Yeah. And then we got to talk about it. Tulane, dread from it, run from it. Tulane is 17 in the country. The Green Wave are 8-1. They beat Tulsa. They get a huge game with UCF this week. Tulane really wanted game day. Unfortunately for them, they didn't get it. But hey, this is a Green Wave team that has just been so fun to watch. If you get the chance to see them, they're a bit of weird look. You see a lot of more option-based stuff out of them, which I'm always a fan of. You got some of the best uniforms in football to go with it, too. Best logo in college sports. At me, everybody. The Angry Wave is undefeated and will never lose a game when it comes to logos. But, man, this is a Tulane team that, I mean...
It's like also your shirt also is the same color.
It is.
He switched teams. He's no longer a Sooner fan.
Listen, as long as OU is not in playoff contention, give me a Tulane to make a New Year's Six game. I'll go support them.
For them, as long as they keep winning, they'll be going to one.
Yeah, I would say they've still got UCF and Cincy to deal with. But if you beat those two, you're pretty much the clear favorite in the American.
Oh yeah.
But of course, it's November.
Yeah.
We've still got a lot to get through.
You still have three more games to work with, and if Tulane can get past that, they'll set themselves up for the championship game, and then they got to win the championship.
Yep. And then at number 18, Texas is back in the top 20.
And
the Horns are 18th in the country with that win over K-State,
who is now at 19.
Yep. And Texas gets college game day once again, and TCU comes in for Saturday night football. Going to be a fun one there. Frogs and the Horns, a huge game for the Big 12. Whoever wins that, TCU has pretty much established themselves above everybody else so far. If Texas wins that battle for the 2 spot, who gets TCU basically at the end of the year, is shaping up to be a fun race.
Yep. It's like I know some people are like, oh, like when OSU beat them, I was like, okay, Texas is not gonna get you a chance to get back in it. Well, Texas found 2 weeks afterwards has managed to keep winning. They beat K-State, who was the second team, and right now it's just a battle of who's going to get that second spot. And if TCU can win, they pretty much kick the Longhorns to the curb. But if Texas wins, they set themselves up for a possible rematch.
Yep. And then, like you said, Connor, right behind them at 19 is Kansas State. To me, I don't understand this, and I don't know if you'll agree with me or not on this, Connor. Adrian Martinez, he played fine, but why do you not keep your hot hand out there and go with Will Howard? With how he had been playing, stepping up against TCU, stepping up against Oklahoma State, I don't know why you wouldn't go with. To me, I would think he's more of the attack you would want against Texas.
Personally, Will Howard was a more suited quarterback to deal with Texas, because Texas pass defense is probably like a mid-tier in the Big 12.
Not great.
Like, their run is overall good. Like, their run defense is pretty solid, but their pass is really bad. I mean, OSU exposed that horribly, especially with all the pass interference calls that were thrown in that game in Stillwater. But that's just one where it's like, I understand your pride. This might be more of a pride thing. They want to, like, hey, we were winning with Martinez, and we want to stick with him, especially with how well he played after the OU game, and he just kept riding that wave. I understand they ran into a brick wall of Iowa State, who hindered their scoring, but Martinez still had a brilliant game. So it's like, you're riding that, and then he gets injured. But Will Howard was playing so well, even then he got hurt against TCU, but he came back, couldn't really do much by then. But then he has that phenomenal game against Oklahoma State. That's one where I think Martinez, even he would understand. You go with the hot hand, especially with how both were playing well.
Yeah.
Will Howard would have been a better team, and then after the Texas game, you can either still stick with Howard or you go back to Martinez, because afterwards you get a better matchup with Martinez.
Yeah, so then you have the game at Baylor this week. Keep in mind, if Baylor beats Kansas State, the Bears are right back in it to controlling their path to the Big 12 title game. And at number 20, it's Notre Dame. They get Navy this week, a long-standing tradition of Notre Dame playing Navy. Should be a fun one for the Irish because, man, this Notre Dame team, they look rejuvenized. Whatever word you want to say, Notre Dame looks healthy again, as healthy as you can be at this point in the season. This has been a fun Irish team to watch. I know everyone wrote them off, and I know they're not playoff contenders by any means, but it's one of those that you just want to see them improve every single week, and my goodness, they've done exactly that.
This Freeman coach team has really responded after going 0-2, and they've only lost one game in their last 7.
Yeah.
So it's like they really have proved that they're a much better team than where they were. They had horrible losses against Stanford and Marshall, and they've kind of just made those games look like, oh, that's a different Notre Dame.
Yeah, that was then, this is now.
And you go in and you just smack Clemson, like smack them. So I understand it was on your own home field, but I think even if it was in Death Valley, they still would have beaten them. that's just how good Notre Dame played. And that might come down to DJ just playing that horribly on offense. But even then, I don't think whoever the quarterback was, Notre Dame would have still won the game. The score might have been a little different, but they still would have won.
Yeah. And Illinois falling once again because Michigan State gets another big upset win. Spartans beating the Illini 23-15 just to throw another wrench in the Big Ten West race. I don't know if anyone wants to win that division. There's still a way Northwestern at 1-8 can win that division. It's such a weird scenario.
Well, it's if you're looking at the analytics, the percentages for Northwestern to even win it are still very, very low. But, the fact that it's even open, then now it's basically you're having to ask everyone else to lose except for Northwestern.
But do you not want to see a 4-8 team win the Big Ten West?
That'd be hilarious, but I don't want to see it. But right now, Illinois still controls their own destiny. They just gotta win. They gotta win against Purdue. But it's like the fact that they still have not locked down that division. It's like It seems like every year, unless Wisconsin has that amazing year where they're really good, no one wants to win the division. Minnesota, who was at one time the favorite, decided, we're gonna just not play football good anymore, or at least we're just gonna lose games for no reason.
Minnesota got banged up. Iowa has been Nebraska is still trying to figure out who they want to be as a team this year. They're not going to figure that out.
And Purdue's just not consistent. They will play well or they'll just play terrible.
Yeah, Purdue's not figured out that they indeed can run the football. Aiden O'Connell doesn't need to throw it 50 times a game.
Oh, you don't want to see passing?
I mean, I do want to see passing, just not Big Ten level passing, unless it's Ohio State or Michigan.
I mean, versus like the rest of the Big Ten, unless it's C.J. Stroud, O'Connell's actually...
He's not that bad.
He's not bad.
It's just, you guys aren't Texas Tech. What are y'all doing? And then it's not going to get easier for Illinois. They still have to play Michigan later this year. So another loss for the Illini can really make the Big Ten West a bit more spicy.
There's an idea, just win every game, probably except for that Michigan game, because you're not going to win that one. So
yeah, that'll be a rough one, but we'll see what Brett Bielema and his team can do. UCF at 22. I mean, if you would have told me at this point in the year UCF would be the highest rated team in the state of Florida, I would have possibly believed it. Florida State, Miami all trying to get rebuilds underway. Florida State going along the best of those big three. But UCF, they're still out there. Gus Malzahn is still doing a good job as the coach out there. And when you switch quarterbacks, you get rid of John Rice Plumlee and you bring in, I can't remember his name, I want to say Keene as their QB. The Knights have been playing well. I mean, it's been one of those things that it's incredible to see. No matter who they have in that system there at coach, whether it be Scott Frost when he was there, whether it be Josh Heupel when he was there, now Gus Malzahn, it has just been incredible to see what UCF has been able to do.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like seems like no matter who fills in the coaching slot, they still remain a solid foundation. That's just more of the obviously being in Orlando. That's still a really solid area to help entice kids to go play football at. UCF's also a good, nice university, but it's like they're just the prestigious of coaches they've been able to get through that program is what's really helped. I will say, except Scott Frost doesn't look as prestigious, but what he did there was great. And then Malzahn's just picking up and has gotten UCF back to where they were.
Yeah.
But I will say, Auburn's right now missing Malzahn right now.
Yeah, so they're going in their whole interesting situation with Harsin being fired.
And this is why Auburn should not be so well. It's like if it's not national championship, it's like they have the Alabama mentality except without the talent. And that's one thing that's what many teams need to realize, that you're not Alabama. Trust the process, but they didn't trust it, and that's why Malzahn left.
To be fair, I don't think half of Auburn's fan base and donors even wanted Harsin from the beginning. They just had to pick a guy. And they were just like, okay, fine, this guy.
Well, that's their fault.
Yeah, but
again, that's why I blame them for running Malzahn off when they shouldn't have. But it is what it is.
And then Florida State at 23. The Noles just dismantling Miami on Saturday night, 45-3. It was so bad. It was ugly if you're a Miami fan. If you're a Florida State fan, it's something you've wanted to see for a while now. Noles are still looking fine. I mean, they get Syracuse on the road a few weeks ago. This would have been a big-time matchup. Now a little bit less. But if you're Florida State, the path to an 8, 9, even 10-win season still on the table. This has been a great year for Florida State.
I mean, after years of anguish, especially after the situation Jimbo left them in.
Yeah.
But Florida State's finally back to being a competitive football team. Their rebuild, while it took forever, finally got on the right track. And I'm happy for them, but it's like, again, it's like obviously are they back to where they would like to be? No, not even close, but they're getting there.
They've come a long way from Willie Taggart. That's the best way to put it there.
Yeah.
Kentucky at number 24, they got their win over Missouri on quite possibly one of the weirder ways to end a game, on a roughing the kicker penalty, or roughing the punter penalty that got Missouri the loss, got Kentucky the win. The Wildcats are number 24. They get a game against Vandy this week, so should improve to 7-3. Not a whole lot to talk about there with Kentucky. They're just still doing their thing. And then Washington at 25. The Huskies upset Oregon State last week. They get rewarded with that final spot this week.
Obviously, a good win for them. They got the upset they needed, but obviously, this Washington team, if they can play like how we know they can actually play, especially with Penix being a much better quarterback than where he was in Indiana, at least you'll be competitive with Oregon, but I don't know if they'll have enough in them to win that game, since it's also in Eugene, so that doesn't help them either.
It really doesn't. But that will do it for tonight. Pretty much just getting through the entire college football playoff rankings. As always, we thank you for tuning in. For Connor Gray and JD Eddy, who was here earlier, I'm Cade Kennedy. If you liked what you heard tonight, feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel. For those watching on Twitch, that is The Guys Who Stare at Stats. For YouTube, of course, you're watching it live on YouTube, so hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit the notification bell to know when you get stuff to your inbox, because that's pretty important. Watch our videos when they come out. If you don't want to follow us on Twitch to know when we go live, you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram at NWTV7 to know when we get live. I hope you voted today. I got my little voting sticker on my hat today. We'll see what happens there. Of course, this is not a political show by any means, but we are going to say we'll always support football on this show, because that's what we do best. But until next time, have a great one. We'll see you all tomorrow, everybody.